Hello and welcome to January again. So, I've been doing my journal and my videos for over a year now, and it's going really well, and I am going to continue doing it. I found last year really helpful to keep me accountable for the things that I'm making and to actually not have too much on and stress myself out and make sure I actually finish the things that I start as well. So, let's see what I made in January. So the first thing is something that I frogged because I wasn't enjoying making it. So I started it on the 22nd of November and then I frogged it on the 16th of January. This is the triangle scarf I was knitting with the Cotton King Sultan Shadow yarn, and it was looking really nice, but it's taking forever to make, and I was finding that it was more of a chore than I was enjoying it. I have decided that while I started this project, putting everything in a journal to keep myself accountable and actually finish things off. I have also realised that there are quite a few things that I've made which I didn't enjoy while I was making them, and so I don't enjoy wearing them, or after I've made them, I find that they didn't quite fit right or they weren't quite as I'd hoped. And so I'm sort of allowing myself to give things up and put them away and try something different, or after I've made them, to pull them apart and start again. So this thing I have put away and I've balled the yarn back up again, and I'll use it for something in the future, but just not this. I finished my 3/4 sleeve jumper. It fits really nicely and I'm really happy with how it came out. The only trouble is that some of the yarn is a bit scratchy, so it's not very nice to wear without anything underneath. So this is definitely a layers jumper where I have something long sleeved and sort of up to the neck underneath it so that it's not too itchy, but I'm really happy with how it looks and how it turned out. The first thing that I started in January, and I am still working on it now, is a granny square blanket. It started out with just the Hayfield Spirit DK yarn, but the amount of yarn that I have isn't quite enough for an entire blanket. So I've just pulled out other yarns of the same weight, and I'm just going to keep going with different yarns and using them up until I get a blanket as big as I want it. I'm thinking to make it big enough to go over my bed, which is a super king, so this probably will take me a while to do, just because I want to have a really massive blanket. Even if it's not actually going to go on my bed, it's an option if I want to in the future. The next thing I tried was the dungarees that I've been trying to make work for me ever since I got them. I've put them away for a few months at a time and then got them out to try and do something, and I've put them away. I don't know if I'm going to try and do anything with them in the future or if I can give them away to someone. The trouble is, because I've altered them, they're not really suitable for anyone except for me, but I don't want them either. So I'm going to have a think about what I want to do with them. Maybe I can reuse the fabric in something else, even if it's just as like chopped up as stuffing to put inside a cushion or a stuffy toy of some sort. But I'm admitting defeat on these, and they have gone into, well, they're just in my wardrobe. They haven't gone anywhere. Then I started on a bit of a Lord of the Rings based run. So I had, for Christmas, I received a Fellowship of the Knits, the unofficial Lord of the Rings knitting pattern book. And I really liked the scarf that they've called the For the Journey scarf. And it's like, the pattern is this lacy pattern. Now, this isn't the scarf that's in the book. The scarf is like an actual, like, just rectangle long scarf. I've sort of turned this into a cowl tube infinity scarf, however you want to call it. So what you see going around the neck is the, like, what would be the length of the scarf. And as I was making it, I was thinking it would be quite nice to have a hat and maybe a pair of gloves to go with it. Or a pair of gloves and maybe a hat. I can't remember which way around. Actually, we'll see which way around it was. So I basically wrote up patterns based on this lacy pattern for a pair of gloves and then a hat. I think that's the way around it was. Let's have a look. Yeah, so it was the gloves and then the hat. Ironically, I finished the gloves before I finished the scarf, because I sort of did the pattern and then I got really into it and I finished it over the weekend. And then I did the hat. I think the hat was Probably the easiest one to do because I'd already done the other two. With the gloves, I had a really hard time on the first one getting the pattern right because I kept kind of tripping up over myself. I don't do a lot of lacy patterns because it can be quite difficult for me to keep track of them. Like I usually, well, what I always do actually nowadays is I put the pattern into an Excel spreadsheet and then I can use that. I can follow it either on my phone or on my computer or whatever I've got in front of me technology wise. And I follow the pattern, but it's harder to follow it when it changes every row because I like getting into a rhythm with something, and if it changes every row or it's like a 5 or 7 row repeat or something like that, I find it personally quite difficult. Once I kind of got used to it, it was a lot easier. But I really enjoyed making these. I've now got this set of scarf, gloves and hats. I'm quite interested to try with different yarns because this is quite a fun yarn because it's like a variegated one, but I think it would be nice to see what it would look like in a single colour yarn, and I have plenty of yarns, so it might be something that I give a go in the short term, if not probably in the long term. Then I made a hat and a small snood for one of my colleagues. It was her birthday, which she didn't actually tell us, which was very naughty of her. So once I realised that it was her birthday, I got knitting and made her a hat and a little snood. She was very happy with them, and I presented them as being from me and the whole team. But obviously it was just me that made them. But yeah, I like making things for people's birthdays. As you saw in December, I had a couple of colleagues, November, December time, had a couple of colleagues whose birthdays it was and made them some things. But it's also handy because it means I can use up some of the yarn that I've got and in the form and give it to other people in the form of something that they will find useful. The next thing that I made is this baby blanket with a little elephant motif applique on it. So my colleague Ellie, who's commissioned stuff for me before last year, she's going to be an auntie soon, so she asked me to make this blanket for her to give to her niece, and I really like it. It turned out really nicely, and I bought a lot more yarn than I thought I needed. So while my goal for this year is to try and use up yarn, I now have more in my stash, but it means if anyone wants anything baby related for a girl, I have baby yarn in pink and white and grey. I did start an ear warmer / headband in like a cable knit type thing. The pattern Thicket from Mirella is really, really nice. But because it's cable knitting, it was really quite difficult for me anyway. And I think I chose the wrong sized yarn and or needle size. And again, it was something that I wasn't really enjoying, so I didn't want to carry on with it. I only spent 6 days trying to do it, and I decided in the end that it wasn't something that I really wanted. I might make an ear warmer at some point. I might make this pattern at some point because I've already got it on my Ravelry now. This one was just not meant to be. And then the last thing is a cardigan, which I started, but I haven't finished it. I'm still in the process of making it. So basically, I'm going to make a jumper and then steek it. I'm hoping that I have enough yarn for this and that it's not one where I end up having to buy yarn to finish it off. But it's not going to be a very long cardigan. It's probably going to fall somewhere between like boob and belly button. It's not quite going to be like full to the waist length, but I want it to come down far enough for me to feel comfortable with it. And then once I've steeked it, I'm going to like knit a button band on either side. I'm not sure if I'll actually put buttons on it or if I'm going to put like a hook and eye closure type situation or just use a big pin to hold it together. And it's going well. I'm still on the first portion on the yoke part of it, and I'll see how it goes. I may not like it. I may not want to wear it, once it's finished, but I definitely want to give it a go. I'm still on my mission to find my perfect cardigan, and rather than waste lots of money on buying various different cardigans which are machine made or mass produced, I might as well use my time and further my experience by making my own. And if I don't like things, I can always unravel them, which is something I'm much happier conceding to than I used to be. So as I mentioned there are a few things which I have frogged in the last month or so, and I wouldn't have done that previously, but over the last year I've got a bit more comfortable with identifying things that I'm not enjoying, or not worrying about getting rid of the things that I either haven't enjoyed making or that I haven't worn since I've used them. So the last couple of weeks I've actually sort of unraveled a couple of things that I've made previously. I think they're both things that I made in the last year, so if they are, I'll put pictures up as I'm talking about them. So the first thing is a big jumper that I'd made. The idea behind it was to have like a big comfy jumper that I could wear at home when I'm just lounging around, something to keep me warm, but not necessarily something as big and bulky as my dressing gown, and not as awkward as like wearing a blanket, for example. I purposely made it oversized, so it was really big and baggy on me, but it still didn't feel quite right. For some reason, I just don't like having too much over my front, and it felt very heavy and kind of restricting, so it felt uncomfortable to me. I didn't enjoy wearing it. So I think since I made it, I have worn it maybe twice, and not for very long when I have worn it. And I realised that it's a bit of a waste of the yarn that I used to make it if I'm not going to wear it or I'm not going to use it in whatever way. So I decided to unravel it, and actually there's quite a lot of yarn there. I could probably make 2 or 3 other things depending on what I'm making, obviously. I can make quite a lot of stuff out of it. There's like between 600 and 800 grams, I think, altogether. Haven't weighed it. Kind of wish I had before sitting down to record, but never mind. I do have an idea for something that I might make, but I'm not going to commit myself to anything just yet. But it's a really nice James C. Brett marble chunky yarn, and it's one of my favourite yarns, so I like making stuff out of it anyway. So I'm sure I'll find something. It's not going to go to waste. There's just an awful lot of it. The other thing that I have frogged, not completely, I haven't finished doing it, but it won't be completely frogged, is this overdress that I had crocheted to wear like over a slip dress. I made it, I tried it on, took photos, and then I've not touched it since because it just doesn't quite sit right as a dress on me for my liking. I think because of how big it needs to be to accommodate my size, there's a lot of yarn, so it was quite heavy and it just didn't feel right. So what I've done, or what I am doing, I haven't finished unraveling it yet, is I'm basically just going to turn it into a jumper, because it started as a modified version of the Wastelander Shrug by Lauren Lewis, which is just, I mean, it can be any length, but the basic one is just like a band across over the top of the chest, and then arms, and the back, the matching bit to the front. And I made that and then just expanded it. The other day I was wearing the Wastelander Shrug that I'd made, and I was thinking it would be nice if I could have this like a jumper, because it's got quite an open neck, so it doesn't feel very restrictive like jumpers usually do, and is the reason that I don't really wear jumpers very much. And I thought it'd be nice to have that as a jumper, or a jumper length, a bit longer. I'm not sure exactly where it's going to fall. Where I've made my initial cut, when I try it on, should be fairly long, but then I can take away if I want a bit more, because it's not getting used anyway, so I might as well see if a jumper length version of that works for me, because if it does, other yarns that I've got, I can make a jumper length one and know it's not a waste of my time. And also the yarn that I've undone from the skirt portion of the dress, I can use to make something else. So while I said in my last video that my aim this year is to use up as much yarn as possible from my stash, that's still the goal. I'm still not going to buy any until I've got rid of a lot of it and used it up. But I'm kind of adding to it in a different way by undoing things that I'm not happy with, or that I want to make into something else. And not feeling bad about it, because it's only my own time that has been spent making these things, because I'm reclaiming the yarn. The money that I've spent on the yarn isn't going to waste because I've still got it. It's just the time that I spent making things. But I enjoy making things, and that's why I do it, because it's the enjoyment of making whatever it is that I'm making. It's one of the reasons that I like giving things away to people, either as gifts for people I know or on giveaways for people I don't know, or people I do know if they fall into both categories, because my enjoyment is in the making of it. And I also like giving things to people. One idea that I did have that I might execute, I don't know if I will for definite or not, but is to make a load of granny squares, all of the same size, and just put them away into a bag or a box somewhere as I'm making them. And then when I've got a load of them, then decide what I want to make with them, because I really like granny square blankets. I like the aesthetic of them. I think they look really nice, and I always want to make one. But the idea of making all those squares and then having to attach them all together always puts me off. And there's some really nice cardigans that I've seen which are made from granny squares all sewed together, like long duster style granny cardigans. But again, the idea of attaching them all together kind of puts me off. So, in a bid to use up yarn, but then also see what I can make with it in the future, if I've got all these squares, I don't have to commit myself to an idea of what I'm making until I've got a load of the squares or all of them done. So that is something I might start soon. I don't know. I haven't decided yet. I've got a couple of ideas in the works which I'm not going to commit myself to just yet, in case I don't do them. In the coming months, we'll see. But it was, well, I say it was my idea. I think the idea came about in a conversation I was having with one of my friends. So it might have been her idea, but I can't remember. If it was, thank you. If not, thank you for being a sounding board while we were having the conversation. So recently I decided to stop doing commissions for anyone that I don't know already, or isn't like a friend of a friend, a referral type thing, because I keep getting people trying to scam me using various PayPal scams. I'm not going to go into detail on how the scam works, but basically they'll pretend to want to order something from you in order to then get your details to send you a phishing or a scam email under the guise of PayPal. And while I have had a few commissions from actual people who I don't know and have gone absolutely perfectly fine, they've sent the money, I've made the thing and sent it, and it's been no problem. The number of scam ones that are happening now is just ramped up. So I've had, in the last few months, I've had 6 or 7. And before that, I'd only had 1 or 2 ever. But it's getting ridiculous now. And so that I don't run the risk of falling for it if they change their tactics or they do something that I don't spot as being suspicious, I'm just not going to do commissions for anyone that I don't already know or isn't some, like a mutual friend, not a mutual friend, like a friend of a friend or friend of family or whatever, just to protect myself, because they're doing this kind of thing to people like me I'm just an individual, a hobbyist, if you will. And I'm not doing this to make mega bucks. I'm not doing it to be greedy. When I charge money for the stuff that I make, it's to cover materials, maybe the postage if it's going somewhere, if I'm not seeing the person in person to hand it to them, and a little bit for my time. But that's about it. I'm not charging hundreds and hundreds of pounds for the things that I make. And yet they're trying to scam me out of money. And people like me are getting it. And while if I lose a couple of £100, it isn't the end of the world. It will mean a tight purse string for that month. But the people I worry for are other people who, like me, do it as a hobby and just to either keep busy or make a little of extra money, not like loads of money. For some others, losing a couple of £100 could be the difference between paying the rent or having electricity or feeding and clothing yourself or your children. So, long story short, I'm not doing commissions for people I don't know. If there is a person who seems legitimate, I can do like a custom order through Etsy. It just means that Etsy will get some of the money in the fees rather than it all coming to me. But that's not the end of the world for the safety and security that we would both have. But it means that if I do get a message from anyone along those lines, I can immediately go, I'm sorry, I don't do commissions for anyone I don't know. And it means I'm not wasting my time either researching something, coming up with patterns and ideas, talking with this person and going through all the rigmarole when they're just trying to scam me out of money. It annoys me no end. When they do this to individuals, it's just not fair. It's like people that target old people. Like, leave them alone. They've had a hard enough life, probably. But to end things on a happy note, me and my other half and our friend went to IKEA today, and I got these tiny little sea animals. They came as a little bundle. Got a little octopus, little killer whale, a little, I think that's a little dolphin, and a little blue whale, and then worryingly scale-wise a turtle. So like either turtles are absolutely massive in this world, or the whales and things are really small. But they were so cute, I couldn't resist them. I managed to resist most of the other things that I wanted to have, but I could. How can you resist that face? Look at him. You might be able to see my Dunkelskog behind me. I didn't get him today. I've had him for a while, and he's my little armchair buddy. He's very good for having a nap on, actually, as a pillow. If you want to find me on any of the other social medias, or if you want to buy something from my Etsy shop, there is a link down below to my link tree, which has everything in it. Thank you for watching if you've got this far, and I'll see you next time.